And welcome to Football Island and another edition of Gridiron Nation on TSN. I'm Jim. He is Gord. Gord, let's get right into this because we really leaned into the abilities of Montreal senior tight end Rohan Jones at Arkansas on this show. And man, did he not disappoint this week.
Yeah, hey, if you're an ongoing listener of this show, then you were well prepared for this weekend as Rohan scored twice in that game, once on the ground, once in the air. And that to me is indicative of what's the most interesting thing about Rohan Jones is that he is as versatile as you get offensively. He had been that way at Montana State last year, but the jump from FCS to the SEC with Arkansas is a big leap. And it feels like he's carried that over to this Arkansas offense that maybe, Jim, you took a little while, a couple weeks to really figure out how they wanted to use this guy. They do also have a more traditional tight end taking a lot of snaps for them as well in line. But Rohan's kind of the more versatile piece. They can use it a bunch of different ways, and he proved to be a weapon for them this week. Unfortunately for him, the team itself not able to close as they blow a 17-point lead and lose to Memphis on the road. That's a bit of a black eye, and unfortunately for them, that's now 2 games in a row where they've been in position to win the game and they've lost a crucial fumble in the waning minutes to lose. So they're going to need to right the ship as a big game looms for them against Notre Dame this week.
There's a lot of stuff that Jones does when he's not a target as well. This allows us to focus on some of the non-stats guys via PFF data. Let's take a look at the offensive linemen on the board. When it comes to them, let's start the discussion with Albert Reese.
Yeah, I mean, Reese has had his accolades in his career. Famously last season was awarded the Best Offensive Lineman in the State of Mississippi award. He has started for now 3 full seasons for the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Now, PFF has never really been a big fan of his work. In fact, this year is his highest career grade to date at just 62.3. He grades out consistently as a far better pass blocker than a run blocker, which I think, if he doesn't get an NFL shot, will translate quite well to the Canadian game if that's what awaits him down the line. So it's been a pretty good start for him. Logan Taylor over at Boston College has had a pretty decent start too. His PFF grade is up around 70, which puts him in kind of the top 40, 45 of guards across the country. So that's a really solid start for him as well. This is his second full season starting there after a bit of time starting at Virginia before transferring. And then the other guy I should mention too, Melvin Siani has transferred from Temple over to Wake Forest and has been starting at left tackle at Wake Forest. And he's had a pretty decent start to the season. Wake Forest, a much more run-heavy attack with a star running back Damon Claiborne, and he has graded out quite well in the run game in particular. So some good stuff there from a guy that wasn't necessarily on our radar coming into the season like the other two.
We've been positioning Rutgers as Team Canada in this show for the first couple of weeks, but maybe Louisville can be a Team Canada in this show. You've got Rene Conga or Wesley Bailey on that defensive front. Who do we start with there?
Well, Wesley Bailey's probably going to be the guy that gives the more jump off the page statistical output. Now, of the two of them, Rene Conga is an interior guy. He's an exterior guy. He's an edge guy. So he's going to have the opportunity in most cases to put up more stats. But what's really fun actually watching this Louisville team is that they're on the same personnel group on the defensive line. So when they rotate in, the two of them rotate in together pretty much every time. But Conga, you hear people in the Louisville program talk about Rene Conga, and they talk about him as one of their really clear veteran leaders on that defensive side of the ball. And let's not forget that this is a team that was in the ACC championship game last year, a game that they had a lead in, and had they won, they would have been in the college football playoffs. So it's definitely a team that we want to keep a close eye on in what seems like a pretty wide open ACC this year, with a few teams of Canadians on them in contention. And Conga has been outstanding. The PFF grade, I think, is up over 90 for him right now. I should note, by the way, Bailey's is also at 83 something. So they're both having a really good start to the season in terms of those things you're talking about, the things that the average eye or the box score doesn't necessarily catch.
How much faith do you take in PFF? At least it gives us a metric, but it seems pretty flexible when it comes to a player-by-player basis.
To be honest with you, I just think that what they're doing, I think they're doing as well as could reasonably be expected. Like, what they're doing is an impossible job. right? Like without having internalized knowledge of exactly what a team is intending on a play and what their rules are and all of those types of things, you're basically just educated guessing in every circumstance, right? And so they've done a better job at the NFL level in particular. I believe they actually have connections within some of the NFL teams that are basically sharing their internalized grading with them. But at the college level, they've just essentially got a squad of employees who just combs over the game film and grades based on what they can see with the naked eye. And there you can have as much football knowledge as possible, but there are certain things that you just won't be able to tell from looking at the page, right? You can take educated guesses, but you just won't know. So I think that that's where the margin for error and the subjectivity lies here. And so I don't think that criticisms of PFF are really valid. I understand why people are criticizing. I don't think it's perfectly accurate by any means, but I think it's just like any other data point. It's a piece of data. It's not the entire data set. And I think that that's the way to remember it, and that's the way to make use of it.
So who's your NCAA Canadian of the week?
Well, I got to tell you, it would be probably valid and earned to talk about Antoine Raymond, as he found the end zone 2 more times this week. That's now 5 through 3 games for him. But the guy I want to shout out, since we talked a lot about him, is Ty Benefield, the safety over at Boise State. I was worried about this Boise State squad. They started the season with a loss on the road at South Florida, which frankly wasn't particularly close. And coming off of a college football playoff appearance, yes, but also losing as close to a franchise player as you'll get in college football in Ashton Genty, you wondered how these Broncos would reload. But one of the stalwarts on this defense, and a guy that just keeps elevating his game after game, year after year, it seems like, is Ty Benefield, running around as Agent Zero on the back end of that Broncos defense. He has been outstanding, cleans up a lot of plays down in the box, plays center field, and can pick stuff off. I think his versatile skill set, you're seeing jack of all trades, sells him short, but you're seeing a really well-rounded, versatile skill set from Benefield that I think will continue to serve him well moving forward.
When we come back, how do you say upset special in French? Well, maybe we'll find out.
This portion of Gridiron Nation is brought to you by Crown Produce. Keep it fresh, Canada.
Okay, U Sports time in the Great White North. McGill upsets Montreal at Percival Molson, and the Redbirds, you know, Gord, they just made fewer mistakes, and they were dominant on the ground. That's what this thing came down to.
Yeah, I mean, I think equally as surprising as the result is how we got to this result with McGill just dominating on the ground in this. Lots undressed Regenbald, the quarterback, a guy that's known for having a pretty good arm and slinging it around the yard a bit. Well, he ran for almost as many yards as he threw for this week. Much more of a dual threat performance for him. Jerry Momo, the starting running back there for McGill, 7.5 yards a carry, almost 200 yards on the ground for him. They ran all over the Carbs in this one. And on the flip side, again, for the second week in a row, the Carabin were not able to get much going on the ground. Just 47 yards from their starting running back, Luca Dembele. Their leading rusher in this game was a receiver. That's not going to get it done. And you're not necessarily shocked to see that kind of rushing output when they're facing Laval, but you're pretty shocked to see that kind of rushing output when they're facing McGill, who they usually can do just about anything they want against. And so this is I think, a real wake-up call for Montreal, who I probably was maybe experiencing a bit of a Laval hangover as well. But I think they've got to shift their focus forward, right? A lot of the math hasn't really changed much for them. Although if they do want to secure first in the conference, they now have to win that rematch with Laval and Quebec City. So a little bit more, in fact, maybe a lot more pressure falls on them at that point. But until then, they just got to focus on keeping a clean slate moving forward here.
Well, a Canada West logjam now, as Saskatchewan defeated Regina in the battle for the wheat belt. That was in Saskatoon. You know, Saskatchewan is notoriously a tough place to win in. Where do you think the toughest place is to win in all of U Sports?
I'm still going to give that title to Laval. It's just a bigger environment than anybody else in the country, really, right? Like, even when Griffith sells out, that's still going to be smaller than Peps in Quebec City. And so I think that's still the most difficult environment for sure. And those people can get very, very rowdy in a big game at Laval as well. I'm not going to sell short Saskatoon, though. One of the things about Griffith Stadium, like, that crowd feels like they're right on top of you on the sideline. It's a very cozy environment along the sidelines there. It's not one of those stadiums that has a track around the outside or anything like that. So it's a really well-designed environment for those things too. And of course, the other thing that often is an issue at Griffiths is the wind tunnel effect going right through the middle of that field that the Huskies are much more experienced at working with than their opposition typically is.
When it comes to Western, though, they have a great record at home. Is that just because they're competitive and there's some highs and lows in their schedule, or is it because of atmosphere?
I mean, look, I think there's a really good atmosphere at TD as well, and it particularly for showcase games, right? Their homecoming is raucous, but I do think that that's more a product of the fact that Western, like, they always get up for big games, but the thing is that they can single out those big games typically, right? So I do want to say that. That being said, like, the same is also kind of true of Laval. Like, let's be very fair here. I don't want to be unfair to Western that way either. You know, Laval also essentially has one big home game every season, regular season at least, as well. So I don't think that's necessarily different for them. It is different in the Canada West, but for those other two, I think they're in similar circumstances that way.
Now, no one has a tailgate like Laval in this country, and I might wrap a few CFL teams in with that as well. So in terms of atmosphere, I think it's number one on my bingo card. Hey, let's take a look at U Sports transfer rules. There was something announced last week that first and second year athletes can transfer without penalty. Has U Sports gone far enough with this? Are they leading from behind? What are their next moves on this in terms of athlete mobility?
I mean, I'm going to start by saying this is definitely a reactive step. This is catching up to the NCAA, and you have to try to keep semi-competitive with the NCAA for some of these athletes, or you're going to continue to lose them. So I do think it was a necessary move for them. I'm actually, this might surprise you, I actually do think it goes far enough. I actually like drawing the line in the sand here. One of the things, and you're hearing the big time coaches in the States talk about this too, and even coach, Chip Kelly, for example, is a guy that decided he'd rather be a coordinator than a head coach, in large part because of the way transfers are working right now around the States. And it's that every single player you have I wouldn't even say on a 1-year contract. Like, every single player that you have could decide they want to leave the program at just about any time. The NCAA is finding ways to rein that in. They've just closed the spring transfer window, so there will only be one. But the fact that any player can transfer anytime means that your recruiting efforts, you're now spending as much time recruiting your own roster, re-recruiting your own roster, as you are recruiting external talent. And so I can't even imagine how overwhelming that process is. And when we get to U Sports, where coaches aren't paid anywhere near as well, have significantly less resources, I think leaving it wide open like this might actually, like, without any restrictions, might actually cause more problems than it solves. So I do think it's a necessary step and positive for the players to allow them more movement, especially early in their career. But I actually do think it was a wise decision to limit this to the underclasses, especially remembering that once a player graduates, they typically have in U Sports at least a year of eligibility left anyway, and can move at that point if they want to too.
Who is your U Sports player of the week this week, Gord?
I'm going to go out to alma mater number one. It's Jared Cesari, who went off in Queen's victory against Waterloo. Almost 300 yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns, including a 105-yard touchdown run, which is the longest in the country this season. That was a big day for him as Queens walked all over the Warriors in Waterloo.
When we come back, a football dad will join us, Daved Benefield. Stick around.
This portion of Gridiron Nation is brought to you by NFL Canada.
High school football coaches nominate your players for the NFL Canada Way to Play Awards. Each week, winners earn a $3,000 equipment grant for their school program. Show us game footage that highlights safe, proper technique, and impactful play. Winners announced weekly on NFL Live and on NFL Canada's social channels. Learn more at NFL.com/CA Way to Play. And welcome back, everyone. Daved Benefield marauded from the edge in the CFL for 13 seasons, was also in the NFL. He was one of the most colorful personalities of his era here. These days, Daved splits his time between Vancouver and California. His son, Ty Benefield, we talked about him earlier in the show, safety at Boise State. Since his true freshman year 3 seasons ago. David, let's launch right into this. Tell me about your journey as a football dad in this strange new age in college football.
Hey, Jim, thanks for having me, buddy. It has been a roller coaster. It's been a roller coaster since the day Ty said, I want the smoke. And that led us to the Trinity League. And he changed his position, which I told him, no one does that in your last 2 years of high school, just like that. And he became a receiver and a defensive back. And then next thing you know, I'm down here with his sister in tow. And, she's in a hotbed. She's in the South Bay playing volleyball. But Ty is all of a sudden becoming this receiver before our very eyes. And he's becoming a DB. And all of us, we're in Washington and we're getting offers there. And it just, getting offers and then taking offers away and then getting on the recruit and then finding Boise. And I think they found Ty and they were happy with what they saw from day one. And that was before we even put pads on. So he's always been an athlete. It was easy to see even when we were playing flag football in BC that he was a guy, he was a dude. And I don't think a lot of people wanted to admit it because they were just like, well, he's your kid, so blah, blah, blah. But Ty's become, according to everyone outside of my realm, they're just like, that's a dude. He's a dude. And when coaches are letting you know that, and you're not asking for them to say, anything about your son, that's pretty cool.
How different was it, though, like we're generations separated from this? How different was it for you when you were being recruited to college in comparison, not just to your son, but your daughter, who's also D1 when it comes to volleyball? What are the points of comparison here?
Well, it's funny. My color man was Carl Hinkle, and he's an Olympian volleyball player, right? For Addie's volleyball. So he would fill me in on everything I didn't know. So, and then all of a sudden in football world, you've got the on threes, you've got 24/7, you have all these guys we've watched on the internet. They're at your games, they're at your practices, they're at your 7-on-7, and they're seeing everything. And they're asking questions. I mean, Michael Fletcher, who was the head of Nike's sports for youth, he's at Huntington Beach. He's coaching there. He's a defensive coordinator there. So he sees a lot of athletes and we can talk about it and see it. So when you're in these deep waters, it's like you only have two things to do. You either perform or you don't. And, in game, like they say, game peeps game. We can tell you who's got game. And then after that, it's like the level, the depth of your game. And we're seeing that. We're seeing it. We're recognizing it. And it doesn't take long to jump out and go, oh, yeah, he can play. He's a guy. He's someone we need to look at and develop.
You're on a coaching staff at Crean Lutheran in California, and you've coached up here in Canada, too, at the high school level. What lesson or lessons can you take away from what you've experienced in California so far that could easily be employed at a Canadian high school?
Culture eats talent for breakfast unless you know how to channel it. You know what I mean? It's like you got to know how to channel it. So, there's a lot. I used to say it in the CFL that if you don't have a great GM and owner, those are two things you always want, but you got to have a head coach. You got to have buy-in from any administration you're working with. If you don't have buy-in from those guys, if they don't know how important football is to a high school, to its student body, whether you're a university even, if they don't understand the buy-in and the connection between student body and football and just what it brings to a community, you're fighting an uphill battle.
Folks, you can go over to our YouTube site and see more with Daved Benefield, but coming up next, Picks of the Week.
This portion of Gridiron Nation is brought to you by Crown Produce. Keep it fresh, Canada.
There it is, our CFC 50, the top 10 high school programs in the country for this week. By the way, if you're a high school football player born in 2009 to 2011, head on over to CanadaFootballChat.com to register now for the CFC Evaluation Camp Tour. Stop in one of 9 locations across Canada for your chance to play in the 2026 CFC Prospect Game on TSN. And welcome back to Football Island, everyone, on Gridiron Nation. And Gord, what have you got for us for picks of the week?
We'll go south of the border to start with here, and it is Notre Dame at Arkansas in a battle between two teams that probably feel like their season they haven't been justly rewarded for the way they've played so far this year. Notre Dame is 1-2, but those 2 losses were 1-score losses to top 10 programs, both of them. And then you get to Arkansas, and as I alluded to earlier in the program, Arkansas has basically fumbled away both of their 2 losses when in position to win the game. First at Ole Miss and then at Memphis this past weekend. So I think that they both feel like they've left some real meat on the bone already this season, but I don't think all is lost for where they want to be. Everyone knows the quality of Notre Dame's losses. For example, freshman quarterback CJ Carr has really gotten his feet underneath them, and the 2-headed rushing attack of Love and Price, the price of love, is really hitting their ground running here. On the Arkansas side, Kalen Green remains a superstar. Unfortunately, he's been a bit erratic the last couple of weeks, has a tendency to have a bad throw or 2 every game. If he can clean that stuff up, he can take over and win any game, both on the ground and in the air. So a real excitement factor for the Arkansas offense, and of course, Rohan Jones involved in that as well.
As for you, Sports, what do you got?
It's Panda Game week, so that is the obvious choice every year. I feel like when this game comes up is that this is the game of the week. The best atmosphere across the country, the regular season every year. In fact, in our last segment, maybe we should have talked about TD plays for one day a year. And as it seems like it is every single year perennially, Ottawa and Carleton are both kind of in the same vicinity of each other and look like a very evenly matched pair going into this game. They've both kind of struggled to keep up with the big dogs so far this year, but they've both shown some signs of life. Ottawa played Laurier tight this past weekend. Carleton had a comfortable victory against what's a pretty decent Toronto squad this season. So they're coming off of both pretty good efforts this past weekend, and of course, as we know in Panda, literally anything can happen. There's no handicapping to it, and it usually ends both close and in wild fashion. So I'll be watching closely.
Thanks for that, Gord. For everyone here on Gridiron Nation, this is Jim Mullin saying, let's get out to the game.